Yeah. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Solidity Fridays, a little bit later than usual, but we are joined today with our usual Tamara and with the Olympix team. So, Anish and Honey, do you guys want to introduce yourselves a little bit and give a little background as to what the product is?
Yeah, sure. Anish, you want to start?
Sure. So I'm Anish. I work. I'm a software engineer at Olympix, and we are a DevSecOps security toolset slash security company. And our entire goal is to try to make security as accessible and as easy to use as anything else, but in the Web3 space. And I think Honey can dive more deeply into that.
Yeah, perfect. So, hi, I'm Connie, founder of Olympix. We started just about 2 years ago. My background was traditional software engineering, security engineering. I then moved into product. I actually started Olympix because I personally was working on a Solidity project. I was like, wow, this attack surface is huge, immutable code, transparent, direct access liquidity. Like, there must be the most insane security stack here. I can't wait to see what people are building. And the more I looked, the more I realized how broken the industry was in the sense that really the only tools available were open source, so they didn't get the maintenance and love that were needed for like a good infrastructure enterprise grade tool, and then a sole reliance on third party audits, which are really expensive. So it really puts a wall for barrier to entry into the space. A lot of people can't afford a 50K audit or multiple 50K audits, right? And on top of it being expensive to get an audit, it's also not a guarantee. In 2022, when we started Olympix, 90% of exploit contracts were audited. So an audit isn't foolproof. While it is, needed and necessary for that double set, you also need that internal, what we call audit zero, to happen in-house with your team. And so Olympix set out with the mission, like, can we build these tools to allow teams to own security and have that autonomy in place? And so our first tool, which is Static Analyzer, which has had really good organic growth. So about 28% of Solidity developers now use the free tool.
Myself included, often.
It makes me so happy. And Anish will tell a little bit about building that out, but essentially the stack that went into making it as high quality as it is today, lowering that false positive rate, making sure we cover more detectors, cross-contract reentrancy, like a lot of little nuances where it sounds small, but one bug can be the life or death of your company. So everything catch, we do our best to catch, and we do it better than any other free tool on market, and any other tool on market that we know of, in terms of static analysis. So that was our first tool. We built that out. We were so excited to see that developers really do care. They adopted it pretty quickly. So what we learned was if you build really easy to use, accessible security tools that warrant great results, and you try and keep it as like little noise as possible, people will adopt it. So then we said, what else can we build? And so Anish, again, will go into, and Anish really humble. He leads so much of the innovation and research on our team. So some of the stuff he's building is just like, you guys will love it. But we went on to build automated unit test generator. We found that a lot of teams were so strapped for time that actually pre-audit getting to that 90 to 100% branch coverage wasn't plausible for them. And that's a problem, because if you go to an audit without like 90 or 100% branch coverage, and that's just the first step, right? You also need to run mutation testing other components of your test, but at minimum, you also need that. And so we built a tool to make that easier, and we leverage our customer IR, 5 proprietary algorithms in our custom LLM to make that work as it does, only passable working tests, with Anish will jump into a demo to as well. And then the third tool that we built, and these ones are all like on big customers now, like for example, Circle's big user of ours and customer, and then a lot of other ones, a lot of them are under NDA and some let us share. So the ones that let us share, I'll share, but the other ones I obviously can't. We have mutation testing. So a lot of teams, on top of just making sure they have the certain percent of branch coverage, also want to make sure that they're testing for all logic, access control bugs, stuff like that. So we actually mutate the tests and find potentially where tests don't pass or can break. And Anish, again, will go into that a little deeper. And it helps people go into an audit with a lot more robust tool stack and like having undergone audit zero. Also, we have an intelligent fuzzer that is underway, which is same theme as always, no touch. You're not writing specs. Your configuration's not like some crazy undertaking that the team never does. It's like 1, 2, 3 clicks, and all of a sudden then everything runs on our servers, and then all of a sudden you get an email back or CLI back. Anish will go into the workflow a little more and actually goes through and tries to fuzz a lot of your contracts. So just continuously building with our North Star being how much of what audit currently catch can we find. And it's not to take away from the audit, because the audit's never going away. It's a stamp of approval, and it's not just that, it's also a security review and a third party, just like pen tests don't go away in the Web2 ecosystem. However, the audit zero needs to come into play for the ecosystem to scale, which means the teams need to be able to find a far greater amount that the auditor is currently finding tomorrow. So then the auditor has more time and space to actually find more novel vulns. The team doesn't want an audit to come back with 500 findings. They want them to come back with 2 because they found one. And then also because then the auditor has that time to think really deeply, like about the code, about the logic, maybe find some edge case. Whereas if you leave a bunch of stuff in there, they're so focused on writing up those findings that that week gets gone like that. And there goes your 50, 100, 500, whatever K you spent on that audit, which is, again, a huge investment. And it's really hard to raise money to get an audit, to do all those things. And we want more builders to be able to build in the space securely and like robustly. So, yeah.
Amazing. That's so exciting, the new stuff you guys have coming. I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Nice job, guys. Yeah, do you guys want to screen share either the website just to run through a bit of the look, or directly into the code base? It's up to you.
We could go directly to the code base. Our website is very outdated. It's like,
Sure.
so it's something we definitely should update. But yeah, needs to
Sure.
All right, so I'll do a quick demo of our start analyze to start things.
Cool.
And if you want to find Olympix on Twitter, they're Olympix_AI. And then you can watch all the exciting new tools come out.
Yes.
Awesome. Do you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
And
And then
if
if
you
you
could
just zoom in as much as possible, it's very small on the stream. Even more, if that's okay.
Even
Yeah.
more?
Maybe one more? Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so why I love this is it's a plugin I use VS Code, and you can just use it as a plugin. And then as I write, I just run it. It's so quick. And then, Olympix. And then it's really helpful. So it's really easy to use. And that's one of my favorite things about it. But it really finds some things that not even like Sliver finds.
Exactly. So right now it's running on the Eigenlayer repository, which, as you guys know, is a huge repository. I think it has like hundreds of contracts, and as you can see, it ran pretty fast. And
it's
yeah,
like
it found
every time.
That's crazy fast. I'm shocked.
and the other thing is completely live. So if you go in, make a change in the code base, and like if the vulnerability goes away, it removes it, and like it's fraction of seconds, basically live as you go.
Sometimes as I write, I'm like, ooh, and then it finds one while I'm busy writing.
Exactly, and it's I think it's also I also think that this is the best part of the Static Analyzer. It's just the ease of use and completely like it just is there, and I don't have to think about it unless I need to think about it. All right, so looking at the experience, so we provide high, medium, low severity, and we also tell you how confident we are about that particular vulnerability. So if the circles are half filled, that means this is high severity, but it's not but we are not very confident about this. But this we are very confident is a real vulnerability. You can filter by high, medium, and low, and we'll only show you the relevant ones. You can also filter by vulnerability, and you can also and then you once you have one, oh sorry, I think it's the zoom level. It's oh sorry, there we go. And then once you have a particular vulnerability, you can either click on it. It will show you exactly where the vulnerability is. You can hover over to see some more details about it. And again, one of the best parts is you can click on the vulnerability, and we have this small article which tells you severity, confidence, affected versions, and gives you a little blurb, a little information about what exactly this is, why this is a problem, why you should think about having this in your code base or not. We
I
provide
love
some
that.
helpful. We provide
You don't make
some.
the same mistake again.
Yes, exactly. So we provide some helpful links. We provide an example of how it was exploited, and we tell you how you can fix it. So yeah.
So what's interesting and what we've seen is it creates these micro teaching moments for the developers because, of course, first of all, like developers are overwhelmed. They're human in the same way I use Grammarly and it catches things, but also after a certain amount of time, I don't make the same grammatical mistake usually again. What we see is like the average developer on their first or second contract will surface an average of 30 vulns. And after completing at least 90 minutes with the tool, like cumulatively, we'll see their average like drop down to 2 to 5 a contract. So you really see these developers become better developers utilizing this tool, and more secure developers and security oriented. They didn't have this tool. How would you learn those patterns? Like you're also trying to implement architecture, write everything out. There's a lot going on. So super lightweight. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. With other tools, it gives you like a CLI. It doesn't take you to the line of code. I love that feature. It just saves so much time. Like, oh, it was here, and then I scroll. But also it's really nice to just learn as you go. It's wonderful.
And you mentioned two things. You mentioned one, we find things that Slither doesn't find, and two, that there's less noise. And actually we have a study that we want to share with you guys on the Eigen layer repo, which we just shared, of Olympix versus Slither. So just understanding the impact of that result and what those actually mean from a quantitative perspective. So Anish could jump into that.
Sure. Yeah, I can pull that out. All right. So what we did was we ran both our analyzer and Slither on 5 of the most active branches of the Eigenlayer core repository. And I think we did this 2 months ago now. And what we noticed was, so let's look at the master branch, for example.
Sorry, could you zoom in a bit, please?
Yes, of course.
Amazing, thanks.
All right. So you see 3 metrics here: false positives, true positives, and true positive rate. All the red bars are Slither, all the green bars are Olympix. So true positive is where that particular tool flags something, and if if a Solidity engineer actually thinks that that's a real true vulnerability that should have been flagged, that's a true positive. And false positive is of course the opposite of that. So as you see, there were a lot more false positives, and this is where like the noise comes up, and this is a metric basically measure noise. And what we saw was across all of the branches, we were just much better than Slither. In fact, if you look at the aggregates, I don't know if this is visible on the stream, but it says
Yes.
We fared an average of around 70% to 75% across the branches, where this is true positive rate, whereas Slither reached around 15 to 20%, 15 to 25% across all the branches.
Wow,
So
that's a major difference.
exactly. So just the noise is a complete game changer, and I feel like this lack of noise is one of the like also very impactful features of the app. Like it lets the engineer focus on those actual vulnerabilities rather than just shutting off the tool, being like and like not even trying to look at the results.
Or getting overwhelmed
Yes,
at things,
exactly.
and then they're like, "Is this?" And then you spend time and you go down a rabbit hole. Like, is this a vulnerability?
And
I've
when
had
you
that
do that
before.
100 times and the answer is no every time, then you don't look the 101st time.
And Anish, do you want to highlight on the ones that we found that Slither doesn't find as well?
Sure, let me pull that up quickly.
It might also be helpful for budding security researchers and auditors to run it through, and then they can get a nice write-up and explain it to their clients much better.
Yeah, we've actually seen adoption from some of these, either what's interesting, auditors at big firms, but not through their firm address because it's not like set practice for their firm, or these smaller shops that are, doing really well right now and gaining a lot of traction, that are more like these bug bounty hunters who started their own audit shops, but really, really smart individuals who are leveraging it consistently. Anish, actually, we were speaking with a customer this morning, and we were really big. Again, we can't disclose the name, but really big in the space, like one of the top 20. And we went through their audit, and 6 out of I think it was like 20 or 30 findings. I don't know exact number, but 6 of them on that audit report, our static analyzer alone would have picked up on. So had they used our tool prior to audit, they would have had a lot more concentration during the audit, like -6 findings, right? So the impact still of not all teams have fully leveraged what you can find using a tool like this.
And I have that ready. Awesome. So this is a spreadsheet again on the icon layer core repository. Is this visible?
It is, but again, if you could zoom, sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
So again, this is just their public repository. We just literally took it off GitHub, and it's for our research purposes to make sure we continuously benchmark this.
Exactly. So this was the branch that we saw just had the most recent commit, so that's why we chose this branch. But what we saw was Slither said that there were around like 10 reentrancies, and out of which all of them were false positives for various reasons. Some were blatantly non-reentrants by just even having the modifier on the function. Slither still reported them as reentrancies, which was surprising.
They probably
And
just check for checks effects interactions then and don't even look at modifiers.
probably, yeah. But what we saw was we found two reentrancies which were none of these eight. So not only were like there were less false positives, there were more true positives. There were more real amount of vulnerabilities that was not even detected by Slither. So this is what Hani was alluding to earlier.
They're cross-contracts, right, Anish? Which I don't think
Exactly.
have the capability to find cross-contract reentrancies.
No,
Olympix does due to our sophisticated IR and architecture. Yeah.
that's incredible. I'd love to hear more about that soon.
Yeah. Okay, great. So Anish, do you want to go into talking a bit about building the static analyzer, the IR, and like how we thought about it? And then from there, we can go into other tools.
All right. For sure. So, all right. So the whole idea of the static analyzer was how can we own the entire stack? Like, how can we do everything by ourselves? And how can we do it in the fastest, most developer focused way? So, we chose to do it completely from scratch. What we did was, if you guys have heard of the Antler parser, we utilized that to create our own complete IR from scratch in C#. And what that allowed us to do is completely choose the sophistication and level of analysis that we want and not rely on anything like the Sol C compiler, for example, which Slither relies on. So that gives us multiple things. One, it gives us complete flexibility on our version control system. We don't have to change parsers or our grammar based on Solidity updates. We can choose to merge, modify, and add to those grammars as and when we want. Two, it allows us to be blazing fast. It allows, so what you saw, the fraction of second compilation isn't available through Solc because Solc just has to do too much analysis. What we can do is we can go really deep where we really want to go deep. For example, we can create really deep inheritance graphs. We can create really deep cross contract function chains for which we need to for reentrancy. But we don't need to, for example, care about Euler somewhere if we don't want to, right? So that entire stack was basically the inception of the static analyzer. Now what we did on top of that was we went through all the hacks that have been happening in Web3 which we continuously do. We in fact put out a newsletter every quarter, which Hani can link to.
Yeah,
It's really interesting, worth checking out.
So what we do is we look at each of those hacks, and those hacks lead us to create heuristics. Out of these heuristics, usually come out new detectors, and that's how our detector cycle happens. So I think we usually try to come around 10 to 20 new detectors every quarter, and that number keeps on growing. Some of them premium, some of them free. But yeah, and that's how our detector ecosystem keeps on growing. And yeah, I can talk more about the detectors later as well.
Sumit, you could talk about a couple cool premium detectors that are coming out this quarter.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing that I'm personally really interested in is the signature replay one. We saw so many signature replay attacks in so many various firms across different. I don't even remember the number. That was like the amount of money that was lost, but I'm sure it was huge. And yeah, so the idea is that it's very hard to generate good randomness, and it's very easy to generate bad randomness. And there are some common patterns that we saw across many different attacks. For example, sometimes the nonce was not even being incremented, or sometimes the nonce was being incremented, but not in a good enough way. It was being incremented in a predictable way, and those were the things that we wrote in the detector. And the usual suspects also lie there. For example, the block randomness, the user controllable values, the user predictable hash values. So that's one I'm really interested in. One more I want to talk about is the low level calls. uh, we saw that a lot of times there were parameters in the call data that was being passed to low level calls without any verification in the middle, and that's what caused, I think, $30 million was the estimate this quarter, and that was really surprising. It was like, and stuff like this is very easily statically detectable, especially given the IR and everything else. So yeah, those are some detectors I'm really excited about.
Yeah, in the past quarter alone, so up until I don't know what did the new quarter start, like 7 days ago, but the last quarter, 58, I think it was, million would have been prevented had the teams used our static analyzer alone. I think one of the ones might have been our mutation tester caught it. I think there was just one of those, but had they used our tool set, so meaning like most of these teams actually had undergone audits, but the audits just hadn't flagged what ours had. And what we do is we just take the contract, see if we already flag it. If we don't, we create it. But we already flagged 58 million of what was
Wow,
actually
that's a huge amount of funds.
It's a huge amount of money. Yeah, it's really crazy. What was I gonna say? Yeah, it's just insane. Okay, so should we talk a bit about automated unit testing, then mutation testing, I guess?
All right. So for unit testing, before we dive deeper into that, everything I'm sure, as Hani mentioned, everything builds on top of the IR. So all of these tools kind of talk to each other and allow us to perform these complex analyses that we talk about. And when we created, for example, the unit tester, the IR grew with the unit tester to accommodate its needs and like the level of analysis it needed. So the main idea is that we we allow you we have so much knowledge about your code because of the IR, right? How can we leverage this to generate unit tests? So that's the purpose of the tool. It tries to optimize for coverage, and we use Forge coverage. So our unit test and mutation tester work on Forge repositories only. But our unit tester tries to optimize for Forge coverage, both line and branch coverage, on your project, basically by writing unit tests. And we do that with the help of LLM. So we have an in-house LLM which we have trained over a lot of safe contracts, which have been audited, and the pre-audited ones that have suffered an attack and had fixes and stuff like that. So the idea is to generate safe, good tests, which not necessarily pass. So it also sometimes will produce failing tests, necessarily, and like it will comment out assertions sometimes where it thinks that you should look at this unit test before you let it pass. So that's a really cool thing that we did as well. And I would love to show it on the icon layer repository again.
That would be so cool. Thank you.
Let me put it up.
Oh, that's so exciting. And it's amazing you updated the VIR, but it's still so, I mean, the IR, sorry, and it's so fast still.
Thank you. Awesome. Let me pull it up. All right. So I did was I went in the icon layer core repository, and I removed all the tests for the eigen token contract and the delegation manager contract, and I asked our AI to generate tests for both of them, and this is what it generated. Let me pull it up.
Do you remember how long it took to do that? Because writing those
Yes.
tests probably took them like a week or several weeks, maybe even a month.
So it took us 1 hour to go from
Wow, what?
47% branch coverage to a total of 72% branch coverage. And
Yeah.
on the other one, we went from 38% to 90% branch coverage in 37 minutes.
And it's not compute intensive. Like, it's not asking anything of your machine. As soon as you click the button, it all runs on our machines, and you just get an email when it's back. So we say, go to lunch, come back and have your test. You don't have to think about it like all tools, non-invasive, doesn't interrupt your development life cycle. It's not like you're waiting there. It's not like it's, disrupting what your computer's capable of. You can code through it and check after. So again, like not getting in your way in any way, shape, or form.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's, again, as we said, developer focused, so it should not be disruptive of your workflow at all. So everything is done completely on our servers. And all right, so everything below this line is completely generated by the AI, and we are sorry. Yes. And so this up till here was the setup, and everything below is completely generated by all the test function is generated completely by the AI. And I can quickly scroll through so you guys can look at the type of tests that we generate.
Sorry, I'm going to ask you to zoom once more.
Of course. Is it good now?
Yeah. And it's amazing that it follows the testing naming conventions by itself.
It actually learns from you. So if you submit, like let's say at 10%, and it gets you from 10 to 60, 70, 80, whatever it is, it'll follow your pattern. If you submit from 0, it'll just mock like general industry patterns. But if there's a certain pattern or way that you write your tests, something a little different, it actually learns directly from you and it mocks that.
That's
Exactly.
so cool.
So, for example, here, these are, for example, the assertions that I was talking about. Like, it commented it out because it thinks that these scenarios should probably have these assertions. So you should probably look at this behavior. But yeah.
Wow, I can't believe how much it did in that amount of time.
Exactly. This is a real-time saver for sure.
And like you said, a computation power saver. Like not everyone has a very powerful machine, so you can just delegate that. That's so cool.
Exactly.
Awesome. And then is it the mutation test that you also mentioned?
Awesome. So let me maybe start with giving a small overview of what mutation testing is. Probably that'd be helpful. All right. So the whole idea is that we generate small differences in your code, which we call mutants. So what we'll do is, suppose there's a plus somewhere, there's an add operation somewhere in your code. So and we will replace that with a subtract. For example, there's a return a plus b, we change it to return a minus b. Or there's a modifier in your code somewhere, we try to remove that modifier. And now we ask your test suite, if we do make that change and we run forge test, for example, does the test suite see that change or not? And ideally, the test suite should see that change, and how it should is it should break, right? Like a test that was passing earlier now should start failing. That's the ideal metric, and that's what mutation testing tries to do. And the idea is that it's trying to suss out a bad commit in that sense. Like it tries to have the test suite be as perfect as it can be, such that no bad change in your code can pass through the test suite. And that just gives you a complete new dimension to think about your code base and your test suite. It's not just coverage now, because coverage is not good enough. It's another dimension. It's mutation testing as well. So, and I can quickly pull it up.
That's great. So you really have like a feeling of security because you know things are robust now.
Exactly. All right. So again, it's I don't think this is visible, right?
It's there. Thanks.
So I took 3 contracts in the eigenlayer repository, and we generated a total of 100 mutations, and they scored 38%, 3%, 7% respectively for all of the contracts. For terminology here, if a test mutant is killed, it's good. It means that the test suite detected the change and killed the mutant.
And broke
So
successfully.
broke successfully,
Okay.
exactly. So higher the score, the better. Right, so let me pull up the
90
results.
mutations in 27 minutes and the analysis. This is insane.
Exactly, yeah. Right.
Oh, it
Is this
accidentally deleted for 110.
oh,
Do Command Z, hopefully. Oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
gotcha. So each this is the mutation report that we return back. Each row here is one mutant. So here's the location of the mutant that we generated. Here's the original code. Here's the code that we mutated it to. For example, so on line 45 on this contract, we removed the initializer modifier from this line, and it wasn't killed, so it broke nothing. And similarly, here we try to change a greater than equal to a lesser than, and it also did not change anything. Now it can mean two things: that this part of the code was not covered by a unit test, or it was covered but it was not checking for example, like an expiry time that was later than block.timestamp. So it like that is what it makes developer think like it allows the developer to think like should this be a test that I should be adding to my test suite or not. And I think
What
that
have I missed?
conversation, exactly, and that conversation started, I think, is golden. Like it's a very illuminating process usually.
And
Something I
analyzer,
sorry.
you can learn from that and be like, oh, I'm not testing for these kinds of cases here. In the future, I will.
Exactly. So again, those micro learning moments, definitely. All right. So one thing that I did want to focus on, for example, was here. So these are probably four functions on strategy manager, which had the non-reentrant modifier. And we tried removing the non-reentrant modifier from all of them, and none of them broke any unit test, which probably which tells me that this was not being tested probably for reentrant cases, which is also interesting to think about.
Maybe the developers just assumed because they had the modifier, but I don't know if that's.
Yeah, it's also pre-audit. Like this is an in progress. ABS, I think, is in progress.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. But still super helpful in that development lifecycle. Like we like to recommend our teams to be running all these tools prior to audit, because you don't want your auditor to be telling you you're missing this and charge you, I don't know, like $1,000 for that finding, or 2,000, however many their hour cost. You could do it yourself.
Yeah, and when they could be focusing on business logic issues instead. And they might miss something devastating when it's something you could have easily fixed yourself if you used your tool.
Like there's so many like edge case weird vulns that can happen. Like anything that a tool is capable, or like that tech is capable of picking up, leverage. And it's a mindset here, because I think the ecosystem has gotten away for so long with minimal security, or like one of the two extremes, like a cheap audit, or like these medium audit firms, or the Cantinas of the world, which are incredible, but it's $1 million audit. Who has $1 million? So you sit on these two extremes. There's no kind of in between of here's life cycle and here's how it's developed. Where you look at Web 2, where the attack surface, comparatively is like this big, because what happens if you get exploited? Reputational risk and data leak like sucks. Regulatory might come down, but your company's not going under. Tons of innocent people's money isn't being taken. You're not hurting and damaging an ecosystem to the extent that you are with an exploit that plays out in the Web3 ecosystem. So like the fact that the best practices and everything hasn't fully evolved, it almost makes sense in the sense that innovation always precedes security. It's like people innovate, even we don't have to talk technically, like, okay, first we put a house down and it's an empty plot of land or empty country or whatever. And all of a sudden another house, and then crime starts coming. So then we put a police station or alarm systems in our house. Then all of a sudden we become a country and we have FBI, CIA, it grows incrementally, but we're kind of at that tipping point where, like, in order to scale and hit the next level, these best practices and like full life cycle needs to come into play. What I've been really happy to see is in the last 2 years, a lot of monitoring companies have come into play. So like those companies, for those who aren't familiar, I know you guys are, but if you're getting exploited, we'll alert you, which is so important. But it's so important on the reactive end. You have to think of a ruler stick with the audit smack in the middle. What are you doing before the audit and what are you doing after? And before is still, I think, evolving, and like teams are slowly picking up to. Whereas I think what's really good is in the last 2 years, a lot of teams have started with the after, but still it's only like 50% that actually implement monitoring solutions. There's so much that needs to happen for our entire ecosystem to grow and get to the next level from a security and infrastructure standpoint. And then, like, you can only imagine, like, we're watching all these Fortune 500s. The Coinbase report just came out. I think it's 10. The average budget for the Fortune 50 company for Web3 innovation projects is $10 million. That's pretty good compared to 2-3 years ago, right? Like, imagine, I'm sure next year will be 15 or 20 or whatever, and it'll incrementally go up. And you're seeing people like PayPal with stables. A lot of these big Fortune 50s, Fortune 500s really start to not just research, but also innovate and experiment and start to deploy, which is incredible. And when we think about the next 10 years, where like all of mainstream, business is going, which some component is going to end up on chain, and having this infrastructure and best practices set out and like secured and robustly developed by the core and beginner users and the people who are laying out the foundation is critical for us to get to that next step.
Absolutely. I love that. So it's proactive security practices instead of reactive. I got hacked, now I'm going to fix it. It's too late. People have lost their money. And like you said, there's a reputation cost. If too many people get hacked, those Fortune 500 numbers for crypto innovation will decrease.
Right. Yeah. It hurts our entire, and like, Anish and I are here in the US where we have this luxury of trusting our currency, right? People we have people on our team who live in Brazil or Argentina, and they're like, we put a lot of our money in crypto because we don't trust, like, this is really a luxury that a lot of people don't have. And this technology changes that reality where people can actually like have some custody and autonomy when it comes to their wealth and their savings, and stripping that away from them it's horrible. Like when we can do so much to give it back to them. And I was just going to say one other thing on mutation testing that I think we didn't even cover. The PenPy exploit would have been prevented with their static analyzer, but also our mutation testing tool, which is something cool. I don't remember the exact line of code. Maybe Anish remember, maybe not. We can link. Okay, yeah. But also, if you would have just if they would have added one more test, they would have seen it. So there's little things where people think, oh, my contract has been on chain for a couple weeks or a couple months, so it's battle tested. Do you know what I mean? Like there's this, like we think it's funny and comical, but like it is.
No, but it really happens. Or they reach 50K TVL and they're like, oh,
cool, we're good. Yeah, nothing's happened yet. Nothing's gonna happen. Well, eventually, as you keep growing, people start to play around a little and a little more. And it's sophisticated bad actors.
Yeah.
It's not a joke, right? Like North Korea's funding their nuclear program with money from Web3 exploits. They're not joking around. These are brilliant people.
Yeah, who are probably using tools that can find these things.
Yeah, we can't not be using these tools because they're probably using a lot of the same tech, right? They have big budgets.
Yeah, it's crazy their dedication to these hacks.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. If you're a bad actor, like where would you going to go? Like wait and try and get past a firewall on the Web2 ecosystem, steal the data, sell it on the dark web, like maybe
and make this much in comparison.
5 million, 10 million, 15 million, when you can just like swipe 80, or like Euler swipe 197 million. Like it's crazy
in one transaction. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe it's also a good tool for white hats to use. To check that, I could have added that one to test.
Bounties, even our static analyzer, we've had, I think, 3 people reach out who collected bug bounties from our static analyzer. And we always say, like, our engineers are so heads down on development that we don't have time to do this. But we're like, one day we're just going to hire someone who just makes us money from using our tools on the bug bounty.
That's a good idea and great advertising.
Yeah.
It shows people how important this tool is.
Yeah, great marketing stunt. Very cool.
Yeah. And I mean, you really can save people's money and get bounties for it. Oh, that's amazing. Are the new tools going to be available on the website when it gets updated? Or how can people reach out to you to gain access to them?
So for our premium tools, like anything above the free static analyzer, usually teams will just reach out directly to us. Like directly on LinkedIn or anything like that, they'll reach out directly. So that's how you we might be launching soon some version of a premium static analyzer for individual developers who aren't part of large orgs, so they can have access to those premium detectors as well.
Very cool.
We're working on a program to make that make sense in the next maybe quarter or 2. And then for, again, like I said, all the enterprise tools, so maybe Anish will touch on the fuzzer now, but fuzzer, mutation test, unit testing, a team can just individually reach out to us, and we can find a package that works for their team and their budget, and meets their security needs as well.
That's awesome.
Very cool. Very cool, guys.
Thank you. All right, I can talk a bit about the fuzzle quickly.
Yeah, that would be
Uh,
great.
right. So again, the idea was we have been listening from so many of our customers that writing fixtures is so hard, writing assertions is so hard, setting up fuzzing is so hard, and our idea was how do we write a fuzz? How do we create a fuzzer that's completely automated, requires no config at all, requires no assertions at all, requires no spec, nothing at all, and that's what we are working on. And I think the V1 is coming out in a couple months, if not next month. But so we created a symbolic execution fuzzer. We use Z3 for solving code paths, but yeah, and that's how we created the fuzzer.
That's cool. Sorry, I don't actually know what Z3 is. Could you talk about it a bit?
Sure. So it's an SMT solver library. The idea is that your code can essentially be converted to logical assertions, and that logic can be solved by a computer, by a solver. And
Okay.
for example, suppose there's a statement, five nested if conditions deep in your program. We can either execute it through solc and then reach that program and or randomly fuzz it, or we get the Z3 SMT solver to find the correct input to reach that particular path.
Okay, that's amazing because like Foundry has inbuilt fuzzing, but it's just randomized. It's a bit pointless. Like you said, it's really easy to create bad randomness, but good randomness is so time consuming or hard. That's so
Exactly.
cool.
Thank you.
Are there any invariant testing tools on the horizon? Or is
Um,
that built into the, I mean, because you're doing symbolic execution, it's kind of combined into your fuzzer, I guess.
right. So the complete idea is you don't have to write assertions at all. All the invariants in the sense are baked into the fuzzer. So yes, like it will try to do the jobs of both invariant and fuzz testing.
Okay, that's cool. So I don't know if I can stop learning Satora Prover because that's been really hard. I can just use your guys' fuzzer when it comes out. That's exciting.
Yeah, but we've even heard from some customers using Certoras, they can like spend all the time, learn the language, write the specs, and then just miss one spec.
And that's the devastating like hack
Yeah.
that happens.
So, or even they'll, Certora is incredible, it's brilliant minds, but even like the consultant misses one spec because they didn't write the code, they didn't architect the code.
Yeah.
Whoever's helping them write it. So you can always fall short with implementations like that, and they're great if you have the time and resources and months to implement it, but it's not scalable to all developers or like accessible to all developers, and we kind of want to change that narrative.
And like you said, it misses stuff. It's not like full coverage.
Everyone misses, yeah, but ideally with our fuzzer leveraging our IR and what we understand about the code because of that, and different heuristics and other techniques that Anish and the team are baking into this, we'll hopefully be able to cover all paths, but we'll see. We'll keep
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow. With your unit test suite, does it your tool can you, like, I know with like Pigeon, which is for simulating cross-chain transactions for, like, let's say it's a cross-chain application. Are there any cross-chain testing capabilities built into your tools coming out, or is that something you would be keen to implement?
So our unit test generator is built around Forge. So ideally, any test that's expressible in a Forge test with no Anvil, we can express that with a unit
Okay,
test
cool.
generator.
And then you can just go vm.fork, so it is
Exactly.
accessible.
So
And
it is
yeah,
possible.
that's amazing. Okay, cool. I might reach out to you guys soon. Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool. And yeah, everyone's using Foundry these days if they're like
Yeah,
up to
that's
date.
why we built it, and I think they have like over like 80 or 90% of market share of developers. So yeah,
And that's just going to grow.
right.
Yeah. Even the hard hat repositories that we do see are the ones that are using hard hat and Forge both. So
Yeah, and I think that I've done some work on repos where you had to use Hard Hat and Forge, but Foundry is just bringing out more and more features that soon. No, yeah, shame Hard Hat. It was great for a time.
yeah.
Oh, awesome! This is really inspiring. Great work, guys. That's so cool.
Thank you so
And
much.
it's also great to just secure the ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys are doing great work. I'm very excited to
Thank you.
see where you guys go, and also to integrate it Very, very cool. Are there any last like, do you guys want to go through anything else, or should we cap it here?
I think we're good unless Anish or Tamara have anything to add.
I'm really inspired. And you've covered a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, you guys have covered a lot. Well then, thank you guys. Thanks for joining. This was another episode of Solidity Fridays, brought to you by Linum Labs and Web3 Sanctuary. And we'll be here next week again. We are keeping up the habit of every Friday now, so it's exciting. We'll catch you guys soon. Thank you so much for joining us, Anish and Honey. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you so much for having us.